Now, for a review of what's making the headlines and the papers this morning, we'll begin our newspaper review with Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Benga. How are you today?
I'm sure there's a lot in the offing. I'm good.
There is
and
a
you
lot.
Too?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. Glad to be alive on another day. And good morning to you, Yolanda.
Dr. Constance, good morning. It's good to see you today.
How is it going?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for asking.
Good to see both of you. There is a lot today, actually. Hello there and welcome to the program. Let's begin immediately with this day newspaper. A couple of stories on the front page here. NNPC shops for equity partners to high-grade its Comatose refineries. FG bows to public pressure, reverses pardon list. This day ranked among 2025 Nigeria's top 50 brands, and new service chiefs get Senate confirmation, vow reforms to tackle insecurity, boost troops' welfare. Moving on to Daily Independent, foreign inflows steady Naira amid weak domestic forex supply. There's also that story on the pardon list. Silver not part of a coup, says aide, confirms military raid on home. Our salaries are amputated before payment, NASU laments. New Telegraph, NAS approves, that's National Assembly, approves President's request to borrow $2.35 billion, issue $500 million to Cook. Tinubu reviews clemency list. We've seen that before. Daily Trust, alleged coup plot. Silver confirms raid on residents. FG withdraws pardon for Mariam Sanda drug dealers. Protest curfew trail Tanzania's presidential poll. Shatima to ACF, don't allow mischief makers divide Nigeria. National Assembly okays Tinubu's request to borrow $2.35 billion. To the Daily Times, presidential prerogative of mercy, still on that story, where the president seems to have capitulated. Court orders payment permanent forfeiture of $49,700 recovered from INEC wreck. State creation proponents to defend requests before National Assembly, according to Carlo, who is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Aircraft owners seek cheaper funding sources, and NNPC set to revitalize Warri, Port Harcourt, and Kaduna refineries. Leadership newspaper, Kano Assembly alleges North marginalization in customs recruitment. Service chiefs vow to fight terrorists, bandits with technology. Daily Sun, again, the same story. Tinubu bows to pressure on that clemency, and then alleged coup plot security agents spread dragnet. The Guardian, FG backtracks on pardon as Nigerians question due process. Vanguard newspaper, the same stories, and then the top right-hand corner, while we're back in Soludo's re-election on Onitsha residents. The Punch, still on the coup controversy. Let's go to the international headlines this morning. To begin, let's see Financial Times. Mittal joint venture bought Russian oil transported on blacklisted ships. Fed cuts rate by a quarter point and signals end to quantitative tightening. The Daily Telegraph, prostate screenings would save 1,500 lives a year. Daily Graphic, refuse collectors threaten shutdown, demand payments by November 7, that's in Ghana. The Guardian newspaper, grooming victims accuse Farage of degrading remarks over abuse. And on Israel and Palestine, ceasefire at risk as Israel carries out Gaza strikes. Daily Express, sex attacker migrant was given £500 to leave Britain. The Independent newspaper, Lamy, I was spat on for being black, but the UK is not racist. That's UK Foreign Minister David Lamy. Speaking on that, of course, we have that photo of Hurricane Melissa that landed in Cuba and has headed for the Bahamas. And then finally, to Daily Mail, Reeves illegally rented out her own family home. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is under fire. We'll see that later. So returning to this day newspaper, we can see from the lead story here that the love-hate relationship with the country's terribly run refineries continues. NNPC shouts for equity partners to high-grade its Comatose refineries. So Port Harcourt, Warri and Kaduna refineries will work, declares NNPC's new boss, Bayo Ojulari. The technical partners, if found, will repurpose these refineries. That's the plan, at least. And Ojulari is quite optimistic about this. The country has already spent $3 billion recently on revamping these refineries that packed up in no time. And in total, in the long run, we may have spent about $18 billion, says Dangote, Africa's richest man. So it will seem that Ojulari, a private sector man used to high performance, has been talked into a possible mirage that the refineries will work again. At this point, it seems like expecting magic. And the other point also is that no one is going down yet for those expenditures that produce absolutely nothing. Gwenga.
I think, again, posterity would hold a special place and will preserve, indeed, a bold place for people who stand by the truth. In 2007, our former president, President Segun Obasanjo, told Shell to come and invest in the refineries, the bid to save the nation's refineries. And they said that no, that the corruption in that industry was too much. So he was able to initiate a partnership led by this person that now owns Africa's biggest refineries, Aliko Dangote, to raise a sum of $750 million to privatize this refinery. Some people went to the former late president Yar'Adua to say that that would not work, that they questioned the transparency. And they went to him and said, you know that government cannot sustain and maintain these refineries. Years down the line, this is 2025, we are still in this narrative and we are still talking about revamping these refineries. Why do we want to pay a deaf ear? Why do we want to be defiant to the truth? I think the honest truth is that in 2021, $1.5 billion was released to revamp this refinery, and they gave us hope that we're going to achieve self-sufficiency, boost local production. But where has the narrative gone? None of this has seen the light of the day. I think it's time we need to speak truth to ourselves, and stop begging the question.
Well, there's also 15% tariff to be slammed on imported fuel. I guess part of the reason for this is to encourage that local production. As we know, Dangote has that big refinery, which is expanding furthermore. And we have the other refinery that will be coming up soon in Akwa Ibom State that is being built by a Boa Group, that's Abdul Samad.
And lots of modular refineries.
Yes,
for small and medium-scale investors.
Exactly, coming up all over the country. So eventually, if you're going to be importing, it might be more expensive to do that. The incentive would be to produce locally. That's the game plan, or that's where we are heading to. At the same time, it's just a convoluted a space that we are in terms of these trade refineries, because as you said, it's obvious the flip-flops are major. And talking about flip-flops, it's something that happens in government all the time. It brings a lot of uncertainty, and that's one of the reasons why when you talk about investors, investors might be weary to come into a space where there is no certainty. It's always changing. There's a total inconsistency. You cannot trust what happens today. One government comes in, makes a policy, the next government completely reverses that policy, and everything turns upside down. So in that kind of manner and mode, it doesn't encourage long-term investment. It doesn't encourage people that want to build with the country, both locally and internationally. So that's what we're seeing. Flip-flop. Let's go to the next story. which is federal government bowing to pressure, reversing pardon list. That story also, apart from this day, features in the Daily Times. Can we pull up the Daily Times? Presidential prerogative of mercy. Tinubu bows to pressure, reduces beneficiaries from 175 to 120. And in that move that reviews a somewhat uncoordinated government, President Tinubu clearly, buckled under pressure, revising that initial list of clemency granted to over 170 individuals, including drug traffickers, kidnappers, those in possession of firearms, etc. The list has been pruned down to 120. Death sentences have been commuted to life sentence, and some drug offenders dropped from the list. Mariam Sanders' death sentence was reduced now to 12 years. So, Yolanda, again, flip-flop of major proportion.
Absolutely, Dr. Constance. And this reversal actually suggests that there was a problem somewhere with the decision-making process. It may not have been properly vetted, because look at the top pardons that are gaining so much popularity from the public in terms of backlash. First, as you mentioned rightfully, the Mariam Sanders case, which is a homicide case and convicted in 2020, which is not too long ago. It's still fresh in the minds of people, and to come and reverse this now after the public backlash that we had is also seeming like they didn't know what they were doing to begin with. The other pardon that I'd like to highlight is the one of the kidnapping kingpin. His name is Calvin Oniara. This man was known for orchestrating high-level kidnapping, abductions that were also violent as well in nature. So to go back on all of these things, it really just seems like it wasn't truly thought out. And this flip-flopping, as you call it, this back and forth, it just raises more questions about the judgment and the accountability of the government. Is this, what was the motive behind this? Why are we now going back on what was said before? Benga, earlier on we were speaking about the different opinions, and you had something interesting, and I'm not sure if you would like to share it.
I think if you ask me, I think we've just violated the sanctity of the supremacy of the nation's constitution, because Section 175 give the president the sweeping powers, and it went further to expatiate it in 5 different categories. One, the pardon itself, which gives the president that powers to grant freedom or a conditional pardon to an ex-convict. And we also have the remit that gives that president the waiver to decide or to reduce the burden of punishment. And we also have the substitute punishment, in which the president could consider a lesser severe punishment for this person. And we also, even the military, we have the military offense, in which the president has the powers to pardon someone that has violated military laws. So we have these 5 categories of the remit, the military pardon, the full pardon, and all that. And I think that we stay here to take the bullets from the social media, and for the government to now buckle on this under frivolous pressure, I think that posterity again would stand. I just want to make one point, just allow me. President Jonathan would have been a hero for reversing the fuel subsidy, but he bowed to the pressure of the people. And now President Tinubu is the one taking the credit for it now. So let's not look at now. Let's look at the after now. And let's look at what people will be saying. What would he stand for? Because the Section 5 of the Constitution vests all executive powers on the president, and it takes responsibility for his action. I think that this is offensive to the supremacy of the Constitution.
All right. So using the word frivolous, I don't know about that, because there are different arguments. On the one hand, some people would advance the notion that what has just happened shows that the government is a listening government. That's one hand. On the other hand, it might also say that it just shows that the government is uncoordinated and everything is untidy and messy. Very, very messy. But there are certain cases, not all the cases of the pardon that people had issues with. it was especially, for instance, the murder cases, when you go from a death sentence to complete forgiving someone, total forgiveness without, taking time to, normally you should reduce it maybe to life sentence, and then you go, slower, lower and lower. But Yolanda, I also want to pick on something you said when you talked about the kidnappers. So if you're forgiving kidnappers, what do you also say of people generally that are into terrorism, that space where they are forgiving terrorists and rehabilitating them, and the terrorists are going back right into the field and destroying people, and they're not talking about rehabilitating the victims of those terrorism. So we're just in a space where there's a lot going on that is not well thought through.
Yes.
And definitely it shows that the government needs to do more in terms of taking time, making sure that there are not too many people making decisions, because that's what it seems like. Too many people making decisions and nobody being totally in charge. And then what it happens, everything collapses.
Just to briefly chip in this, if you look at it, during the announcements, the powers, the delegation of pardon was moved from the Ministry of Special Duties to the Ministry of the Attorney General of the Federation, to the Ministry of Justice and the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. And a clause was added that they should make sure that this kind of thing should not reoccur again. It shows that in the process of decision making, there have been some infractions. I don't want to go into that now, but I leave that because of our timing.
Okay, yes, we don't have time. Let's move on to Vanguard newspaper. How to fix Nigeria's security challenges. That story also is in this day. So please, let's pull up this day. New service chiefs get Senate confirmation. VAR reforms to tackle insecurity, boost troops' welfare. And then to Vanguard now, how to fix Nigeria's security challenges according to service chiefs. So the newly appointed service chiefs scaled through a Senate confirmation without any problems at all, not that we expected any. So who are they again? Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyade, Chief of Army Staff, Major General Waidu Shaibu, Chief of Air Staff, Air Vice Marshal Sunday Aneke, Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Idi Abbas. So they have asked the federal government to help them in this new job that they've been given, or assignment. And one of the ways to do that is to empower the police force with adequate funding. This will relieve the military from internal security responsibilities that they've been often called to do, and enable them concentrate on constitutionally assigned roles. General Oluyade also asked for adequate funding for the military and for government to prioritize local production of arms instead of relying on import, and for greater support from Nigerians in general. So quite an insightful take from the Chief of Defense Staff in empowering the Nigerian police force. They need the capacity to handle internal security. It's not the first time we are hearing this. It's not the first time it's being said, but it is a good opportunity to refocus on this. In many cases, the military is totally distracted with police responsibilities. Some of them running errands for politicians, being security aides, security escorts to politicians, and running under mundane jobs that they should not be doing, Benga.
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, we need to properly commend the outgoing, the immediate past Chief of Defense Staff, because the narrative must be sustained that he did a fantastic job. But in as much as he did a fantastic job, we still have this recurring threat to the national security.
Yes.
We have the violent extremists still resurging in the northeast, the banditry in the northwest, and separatist movement in the southeast. But now, looking at the narrative coming from the newly sworn in Chief of Defense Staff, Femi Oluyele, he had prioritized that he was going to boost foreign partnership. He's going to promote local production of arms, because he said it's just cost effective to rely on local production and also to boost interagency cooperation. Brilliant narrative coming from him, but this issue of relying on foreign partnership is just what I have a little reservation about.
Okay. If you don't mind, can I just chip in with a quick comment here? You know, this relook at a new, you know, service chiefs, it really does shed a light on some of the issues in the country that we need to pay attention to. If we look at some of the headlines that have been making the rounds, we have all these civil wars and breach of security in countries such as Sudan. And
Absolutely.
We need to learn from those countries and see that we don't end up in a situation such as that. You know, we have a lot of security breaches when it comes to what is happening in the nation of Nigeria, just as rightfully mentioned by Benga. And we need to be able to, you know, have credible people who are able to stand in those positions to deliver. Also in the area of not having enough resources is something that cannot be repeated enough. And yeah, I look forward to what might happen and the changes.
Wish him the best of luck.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Let's quickly move to Daily Trust. We even have lesser time today. Daily Trust, alleged coup plot, Silva confirms raid on residents. That story also appears in the Punch newspaper. Coup controversy, military tracks 45 billion naira in the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. So as much as the government has tried to keep this alleged coup plot story under wraps, it's resurfaced again and again. The Punch report disclosed that this amount of money, 45 billion naira from NDDC account, was disbursed to some politically exposed persons and soldiers detained in connection with this rumored conspiracy to topple the Tinubu government. The home of former governor of Bayelsa State, Timothy Silva, also in this report in Daily Trust, was raided in connection with the plot. He is abroad with his wife, and his aide denied any involvement of his boss in this plot. The aide said desperate politicians are trying to rope in Silva. There's currently a panic at the NDDC headquarters, where, you know, the monies linked to a particular project awarded to a former governor in the South was traced to some detained officers. So it's obvious that these investigations will continue and a lot more will unfold. There were earlier reports of 16 military officers that were detained. Now money is being tracked. As they say, follow the money. As we can see, a coup plot or stories of a coup heightens anxiety over the stability of the Nigerian government. It does trigger political uncertainty, and this is not what the government wants to see at this time. Again, top-level security shake-up around this time feeds into that narrative and definitely sends a different message. What does this all mean? Part of it is that there is widespread dissatisfaction with both the political and economic situation in the country. Quickly moving on to the international headlines, you know, there's Tanzania, you know, where elections were supposed to be held yesterday. The polls opened, but pre-election there were crises and some protests, and a curfew was imposed. We're hearing that the current president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, is in the running to become the president again, or to be returned as the president. How she handles this whole situation will set the tone for the rest of her political career. There's Sudan, also very disturbing news coming from Sudan of massacre of civilians, over 400 of them by the Rapid Response Force in a hospital. This war has been ongoing for over 2 years and has seen mass atrocities across that country. To China and the US, where the two biggest economies in the world, and the President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping met in South Korea. There hasn't been an announcement of a deal, but you can see that in spite of the way that President Trump has managed this whole thing, is very rambunctious, but Xi Jinping and the Chinese have been rather calm, revealing that they are grounded and their global influence is growing, and they're just taking a different approach. So many other stories that unfortunately we can't take because we're out of time. We have other things to do today, but you know, those were your headlines today.
Thank you, Dr. Constance.